I'm really excited to talk about democratizing ML education with GitHub. That's the title of my presentation today. And so let's get started. So, my name is Elvis. I work as a technical PMM, just a product marketing manager at Meta AI. So, I do a bit of communication and do a bit of marketing. Also, a contributor of Papacy Code and DAIR.AI. So, Papacy Code is a place where we organize machine learning code for ML papers, and DAIR.AI is basically an initiative, community driven initiative to democratize machine learning education. I'm also an independent researcher. I do a bit of research for topics around NLP, like language models. And you can also find me in places like Twitter and GitHub as well. So I want to talk a bit about my involvement in ML education. As I've introduced already, DAIR.AI is an initiative that I'm very heavily involved, and it's a community driven initiative, meaning a lot of folks from around the world, they come together, put their minds together, and basically collaborate to provide tutorials for the community. And these tutorials are around AI and machine learning. So we have a lot of those and tutorials and repositories where we're basically democratizing machine learning education. We do open source. We open source all our tutorials. We open source all our research as well. And we have even also contributed to, like data sets for machine learning. I've also been involved in machine learning research, as I've said. And one place where I spend a lot of time thinking about how to organize machine learning knowledge is Papacy Code. I'm a contributor, but I also work closely with that team. And basically, our mission is to organize scientific knowledge and converting that information into useful knowledge. And I do a lot of community building, collaborate a lot with researchers to organize content better and to make sure that we are pushing for open code and open source code around machine learning papers and machine learning research in general. I also do a bit of data science and NLP research as well. So the topic of this presentation is around ML education. When I say democratizing ML education, I mean a couple of things, and I'll get to that in a bit. But I also want to start with what's the state of ML education today? As I think really hard about this problem and how do we use the tools today? How do we work with a community to help accelerate ML education and improve it in general? We need to understand what's the state of things. And there's a lot of really good content already online. Obviously, there's free content, like YouTube courses, there's lectures, there are places like Coursera and Udemy, there's great books where you have a lot of different approaches where that aim to teach you about machine learning techniques and deep learning and all these new emerging topics in AI. So there's great content. The issue is how do we actually use that knowledge and put it to practice, right? That's the problem we are trying to solve here. And what are the tools that we're going to need? And in my opinion, I think tools and AI-enabled tools, more specifically, are good examples of enablers to help accelerate ML education. And we're going to talk about that here, and we're even going to demo it about how AI tools like Codespaces and GitHub are accelerating ML education. So GitHub and Copilot offers, I think, the right set of tools, the right approach to making sure that whatever education we are democratizing is accessible, right? It's easily shareable. It also has that collaborative nature to it, and you can build upon very easily. So I think these are some of the foundation blocks, I would say, that we need to work on and needs a lot of work on. And when I say community, I think community has a lot responsibility to make machine learning education more accessible. But there are also other areas that need a lot of work. So one of those areas is accessibility. Accessibility could be as simple as providing content in a different language, right? For everyone, accessibility might mean something different. I think accessibility is an interesting one because accessibility not only in terms of language, but the tools as well. Where are we providing this educational content? How we provide it really matters, right? If we are going to provide it in books or we're going to provide it in courses that may not be as accessible to some students, and we need to make it as accessible as we could. Extensibility is also very interesting because when you're thinking about accelerating ML education, what you want to do is you want to help a community, to find content. You want to encourage a community to build upon the content that exists as well. So you want to have a set of best practices where students can come, maybe help the next generation to keep building upon this and build upon that. And I think in the science domain that works really well. I think that's something that's missing and we need to work on. And tools like Codespaces are already helping out with this. And also, I think it needs to be collaborative. Whatever solution we're going to use needs to be collaborative in nature. And what I mean by that is that when you have a set of tutorials or set of content, right? Anything that's educational, any material that's educational, it needs to have an element of collaboration. Collaboration because it's the community that's going to help build this, for the next generation. And I think places like GitHub and there are other wonderful places as well where information is shared offers the right tooling to make collaboration much easier. I think discoverability is an interesting one. It's an area we think about a lot. Working for Papacy Code and that team very closely, I think about this problem a lot. How do we actually make content discoverable as well? Because we could have really good content. We could solve accessibility, we could solve extensibility, we could solve collaboration as well. But if it's not discoverable, then it serves no purpose. So we also need to organize the content better, present it better, and make it more discoverable for everyone. And I believe GitHub and Codespaces and a bunch of other tools are already enabling this in very interesting ways. So I'll talk a bit about what Copilot is. In the demo, I'll get deeper into that, but at a high level, Copilot is basically an AI peer programmer. It allows you to easily give it a set of instructions and it gives you code. It generates code, and that's AI powered. It's the the technique behind that is called OpenAI Codex, and Codex is enabling these generation tools. So it's an excellent tool for learning as well and for teaching, right? So you can imagine someone comes and has Copilot installed, they can learn themselves, but also use it as a tool to showcase what's possible with it and give instructions and so on. Codespaces is another interesting one, and I think that's what I'm excited mostly about today. Offers the right environment, offers the right set of tools to put everything together in one place, right? So when you're working, the code lives there, the tools are there, libraries are there, everything is in one place and it's not everywhere. And that makes things much more accessible. It also amplifies the other key things that I mentioned, such as discoverability and extensibility as well. So Codespaces, in short, is just like a fast cloud developer environment. And it provides an environment where I believe really powers ML education. It does solve the problem of accessibility. It also allows you ways to build on what exists and just keep extending that. And then it also is very collaborative as well. And obviously, it is discoverable, right? Because you can just find it basically by going into a repo and finding the content there and accessing it. So in short, what I've said is that Codespaces, plus Copilot, and many other AI-powered tools are now accelerating education, and it's great to see that. It's great news because not only now do we have the right tools to help accelerate the education, but also build a set of good practices around that as we keep thinking about this problem of ML education. In the next few minutes, I will go through a demo. I will show you how we can use Codespaces and Copilot to really empower learners and have a set of tools that allow students and learners to hit the ground running rather than being frustrated about how to install tools. In this demo, I want to demonstrate how we can use GitHub tools, Codespace, and Copilot to help with machine learning education. So we have created, together with the community, a set of ML notebooks. You can find them here in the organization, DAIR.AI organization. There are a couple of machine learning notebooks that we have here, around machine learning, natural language processing, transformers, computer vision, and so on. So one problem is, how do we make this content accessible, easy to access, and to build upon? And also, we are interested in a solution that makes things collaborative as well. So if someone wants to build upon some of these notebooks and contribute to the repository to keep building the content and keep democratizing the education, what do we need for that? And I think Codespace plus Copilot and a bunch of other tools are really allowing this to happen in a very, very interesting way. So what I want to demonstrate here is, how do we go about using these tools like Codespace and GitHub to accelerate ML education and democratize it. So in this repo, we have a couple of notebooks. So if you go into the notebook folder, you will find a couple of the notebooks here that we have created. And what you will notice here is that we have this code button, which is where you would be able to create a Codespace instance. We want to create an environment where we can run this code easily and we can hit the ground running with this content. That's ideally the experience you want to offer students. So in order for us to create that environment where we have all the tools installed and all the libraries that are necessary to run all the notebooks in this repo, we could hit in that code button, that green button here, and create the Codespace. Here I'm interested in creating a Codespace based on a configuration that I'm offering. So the configuration is in this dev container folder. You can check that out. And once we go to that option, we can now hit create and create the Codespace instance based on a few options. We are using main as the branch, but you can use any branch. And the dev container configuration, we are using the one that's provided as part of the repo. Region doesn't matter here, and machine type as well, but those are options you have, and then you can create a Codespace. Once you hit that button, then you will be taken to the Codespace instance. There's a process, obviously, that is in charge of creating the environment based on that configuration file that you specified, and it creates this instance for you. This instance contains some of the tools that you will need to make those notebooks that are part of this repo runnable. If you notice, when I say notebooks, it's basically what you have here is something that looks like Visual Studio Code for those of you that have used that. Basically, the Codespace instance is like Visual, VS Code on the browser. So what we want to do here is, I want to show you how you can easily use the Codespace instance to make this content runnable for anyone. And in this Codespace instance and this environment, right, I have already installed, the tools have already been installed, but now I need to install the libraries that I'll need to run these notebooks. And they're mostly Python libraries. So I've used Conda, as a tool to create environments where I can install the necessary libraries to run the notebooks. So I've done that ahead of time. It takes a bit, but in this demo I won't have too much time to do that, but I've done it ahead of time, and I've created an environment called NLP, and I've activated that here. So now I can, as an example, I would like to run this notebook. You can see here that I can run through the code very easily. Everything is already installed, and it's allowing me to interact like you would do with a Jupyter notebook locally. So that's very powerful because everything lives here. The content of the notebook is not that important, but as I'm going through the cells, something changed in this repo, and I can easily check source control. And if there's any changes that I want to push back to the original repository, I can easily do it through here. as well. So it's a great tool for source control as well. I won't go through all the code cells here, but you can try this on your own. But it's definitely something that is runnable, and it allows you, pretty much like out of the box to run code and push changes to your repository. Allows a collaborative environment, very easily to spin up, and I think that's a beautiful experience for anyone that's learning and also for anyone that's teaching as well. So this is why I'm excited about Codespace and Copilot as well. These tools are providing a means and a way to accelerate how we learn and how we teach students as well. That's it for this demo. But hopefully you got an idea of how powerful Codespaces can be to provide an environment to students where they can not focus on all the tedious installing of tools and libraries and so on, and that it's much easier to hit the ground running with learning. At the end of the day, what we want is to provide an environment where the student can come and focus on the actual content that they need to learn rather than having to stitch up things together or having to install libraries, and it could be a headache. It could be a very bad experience for students, and it can discourage students. So that's really the powerful, I think, feature of something like Codespaces combined with other tools like Copilot, management of GitHub repositories, and so on. Thank you for listening. The last thing I want to talk about is the future of ML education. I've given a couple of examples of the tools you can use to help accelerate ML education, but we are just getting started with all of this. Right? We need a community to, as I said, help build best practices, keep improving the tools, give feedback in creating the content that will accelerate the education in ML space. And I'm really excited about the future of ML education as we see the community get together, sharing ideas, and making content more accessible. I think with the right set of tools and keep improving those tools, it is making things more accessible. It's making information more accessible. I think education will improve, and it's a cycle. Another thing that I want to highlight to wrap up this talk is how you can contribute, right? What do we do? What's the next step? You can think of education as a powerful enabler for the tools that you're building as well and their adoption. In the past, I've worked as a professional trainer, and I've seen how powerful it is when you put together a set of really good educational tutorials and material, how that really creates a lot of adoption and it enables people to be able to use those tools. So we need to do a lot of work there. We also need to think about accessibility, as I said, how to make content accessible. Right? When you build a tool, you build a library and you open source it, what are you offering as part of that launch or as part of that tool to help folks learn about those tools, and contribute eventually, right? We need to always have that sense of community because it's going to help open source and it's going to help folks to continue thriving and continue to contribute to the open source world. And I think Codespaces is going to enable all of that. In the next coming years, I think we're going to see more and more of what I discuss here, which is people focusing on accessibility, education, making things discoverable, a lot of adding a layer of organization, how we organize content and make it more accessible to everyone. And AI is going to be a huge part of that. So we need to think about how to make it easier for users to basically try and learn things, right? By enabling that and kind of empowering everyone to learn with the right set of best practices and tools and educational material. We have basically solved that education problem, and we are now in a cycle where the next generation is going to keep improving the tools that we have built.